Okay, thank you. No, thank you very much. Whoa. Kia ora tātou, ko te me tuatahi tēnā koe te atua, anana nei na mea katoa, i ngā tangata katoa i huhi mai nei, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Those of you that know me know that I don't mind talking at all, and I do a lot of it, but for some reason I've found this particular talk very, very hard to prepare for. And yeah, it's been a curious thing. Maybe it's talking about yourself. But Eric has asked me to talk a bit about Leadership Lab and where we came from and how we roll. So I'm going to attempt to do that. So Chris Jansen is my name. I am part of Leadership Lab, one of the directors of Leadership Lab. I contract to UC, and I used to work for UC for about 15 years prior to this. And prior to that, I was a lot of other things. I was actually originally a civil engineer, strangely enough, and I've also been a therapist with child, youth and family. I've worked in drug rehab in Atlanta, Georgia in the States, so I've kind of had a pretty eclectic career. But being involved with Leadership Lab for as long as we've been existing, which is about 6 years, we're not too sure. So Leadership Lab kind of happened accidentally for two reasons. Kind of looking back, you know, that retrospective thing. One was this, all right? So many of us were here for the earthquakes, and we're on our knees here, weren't we, as a city? And to be really honest with you, I was at UC at the time, and I was kind of working 1 day a week as a sort of a pretend consultant. And, you know, one of our big motivations at the start of Leadership Lab was we don't want the Aussies to come and fix our city, all right, or anyone else from anywhere else. We want to fix our own city. And it sounds kind of trivial, but that was a big motivation for us. That, you know, we've got expertise here. Why don't we team up and have a crack at this? You know, because we had, 160 schools wrecked, you know, 2 out of the 3 hospitals wrecked. You know, I think more than 50% of the NGOs lost their buildings. You know, it was a mess, wasn't it? And that's just those 3 sectors. So there was a lot of big system issues. And yet here I am, sort of Chris Jansen doing his little 1 day a week thing. And lots of my mates were consultants doing their little boutique business things. And we realised that none of us would be able to work at the scale required to actually have any impact in Christchurch. And we wouldn't be taken seriously. So we thought, why don't we figure out a way to kind of team up and be a collective, all right, and kind of have one shop front and then talk to government based on that, all right? But why don't we try and do it in a way that we don't have to kind of merge and sort of lose our autonomy, because we love that too. So let's sometimes work together and sometimes work by ourselves. And that's kind of was one of the ideas. The second idea was that, as I said, I was at UC at the time, so I was reading a bit of stuff. And we had lots of theory, and I guess we thought maybe we should have a crack at putting the theory into practice. So one was this here, Brad Jackson. He's a professor in Wellington, Victoria Uni. He says why we should become a leadership laboratory. All right, I'm not sure if we got the word leadership lab from there, but it looks quite familiar, doesn't it? But it's the idea that if New Zealand can't do it, nobody can, all right, in terms of thinking differently about leadership. And I read this and thought, hell yeah. Have a read of that. And if you don't want to read all of it, just read Crossing the Divides. Right. This really, really inspired us. We thought what we really want to do is think about, can I reach out to you? Reaching out to someone across a sector, across the community, not a friend, not a colleague, but someone different, very different, maybe talks different, maybe thinks different, maybe I don't even like them, all right? But what would it look like to reach out and actually collaborate? It's interesting. Frederick Laloux, Reinventing Organisations. If you haven't read this, well, maybe look at the YouTube video, all right? But it's the idea that organisations have kind of got a life cycle, and as our sort of human thinking grows, so does our structures of organisation. So a lot of what we've heard is down this kind of evolutionary end, all right, the flat horizontal structures. So we read this and thought, maybe. Social labs, the idea that why don't we organise ourselves around issues? You know, why don't we all get together around important things we care about and do something about it? Like that idea. And hierarchies and networks, all right? And some of you have probably been in sessions where I've talked about this, and I talk about this a lot, all right? How do we find the sweet spot between not deleting hierarchy, and just taking on networks, but go, there's goods on both sides of these, right? And we often talk about this idea of pluses and minuses on both sides. Now, those of you that know this kind of model know that you're trying to work both sides of the positive by doing this kind of process of sometimes being structured and sometimes not, right? But this was all going through our minds in this post-earthquake context and thinking, what would a company, what would an organisation look like that was informed by this stuff? And Jason, sitting at the back there, and another friend of his and mine, we had a conversation early on, and I remember it wasn't Jason, but it was the other chap who basically sat us down and said, Chris, let's be honest, all right? I've heard a lot of talk, and generally people come into Christchurch saying, here's a great idea. It's amazing. It's already designed. Do you want to do this? And it's way too constrained. So I've heard that. And I've also heard people that go, oh, we should just dream up some new stuff and let's go blue sky moonshots, you know. And he says, you know, they never get anywhere. They just talk, talk, talk. So they're either too constrained or they're too loose. He says, which one are you? And I remember thinking, that is a very good challenge, all right, because I do want to be very aspirational. We want to really do something different here. But you know what? We want to land it. We can't afford to just talk about this. We have to land it. It means we have to make an impact here in the city. So, quite a motivation. So, Leadership Lab is a wee bit accidental. It started with 3 of us, and some of you will know my colleague Tim Pidsley, who tragically died 2 years ago. He was one of the 3. He was the theory guy. He really knew his frameworks, and all those slides I showed you before, he introduced me to that. Right now, he is not here with us now, but his kind of thinking still permeates, and sometimes his name is Tim Pidsley. But this is what we do. All right, Leadership Lab is now about 40 people-ish, not too sure. Sorry, Billy, we don't know the membership. What we're about is collective responses to complex issues, right? Or tackling hard stuff together, right? And I'm going to give you some examples of this in a minute. So everything we do is designed around an issue, like the Social Labs idea. That's what we do. We look like a leadership development company, you know, leadership consultancy, but actually that's not what we do. What we do is get people around issues that they care about, all right? That may involve leadership, but that's not the goal, all right? Put these up here. Pretty much our approach is to work with networks of leaders. We don't work with individual organisations much. We work with whole systems over time, all right? And what we're trying to do is enable collective leadership across the system to basically solve their own problems, right? It's not a great business model because if you're successful, you're not needed anymore, all right? But that's okay. There's other ways to do that. And we'd have a holistic approach. So we kind of tend to work with the system, but also realise that every individual matters. So you're going to grow the individuals at the same time as growing the collective, all right? And you've got to do both of those, yeah? And this is probably critical, authentic co-design. I know it's a trendy word, but we really mean this. See this page here, the blankness of it? That's where we start. We don't start with the plan, what we're going to do, but we start with this blank sheet. All right? And I want to get on to talking a bit about behind the scenes, what Leadership Lab looks like, but just to finish this little bit, Billy, yep, we've codified what we do. So we've written down a number of models. This is one of them, and those in Lake help write this. We call it showing up differently, but basically what it means is, I'll show you, this is hard to read, but I'll show you the easier version. It basically means this. This is what we do. All right, we identify an issue, all right, and it's usually another person that comes to us with the issue and goes, hey, I've got an issue. All right, we find out who cares about that, so we get some stakeholders around that issue, all right, and that's usually lots of coffees, right? Then we dream up some stuff together, let's call that co-design, and then we try a bit of stuff and we change it really quickly. Now, let's get really specific here. These are some of the issues we've been invited into supporting with. So this is the link one. How do we prevent grassroots community leaders across Canterbury from burning out after the quakes? Because if you remember, they were. People were dropping like flies. Right? So how do you support leaders who don't even want to call themselves leaders, so they're completely invisible and they'll never apply for any support, right? Because they're very humble. You know, that's quite a design challenge. All right. So Link 5 years on is having a wee go at that. How do we overcome the culture of competition between schools in order to create coherent pathways for students? All right. tomorrow's schools. It's a big problem in New Zealand. You know, big clunk between ECE and primary, and another real big one between primary and secondary, right? Not great pathways. Kahui ako is a process that's going on, pretty hard to pull off, and they're struggling around New Zealand. So how do you get people together with good aspirations but hard implementation? How do we support over 150 schools in Greater Christchurch to rebuild and undertake major redevelopments? I mean, that's just a nutty number, isn't it? 150 schools. And that's exactly what's happening. You know, only about a third of them are actually built yet. So if you thought it was over, no, just keep watching. So we're involved with a thing called Grow Waitaha with Ngāi Tahu and some other consultancies, and that has started from this. All right, now it looks quite comprehensive, but it did start like that. We work with specialist mental health. They are absolutely overwhelmed over at Hillmorton. So how do you ensure that specialist mental health staff can collaboratively support numerous community members without falling over themselves? All right. And this is probably the most special thing I've ever done professionally, and some of you helped with this. So after the terrorist attack, we happened to meet through a friend, a couple of the Muslim leaders, and got invited in to help them with the recovery centre at Hagley. And I put out a simple base camp message to our networks and had 70 volunteers come for 2 weeks and help run that. Bloody humbling that was. Yeah. Thanks for those that helped with that. And this is one we were just working on yesterday. How do we nurture tamariki who have huge potential but not been recognised? Right? And this is 15 to 18-year-olds who, as they say, do the mahi, don't get the treats. Right? So they don't have the badges. They're not naughty, but they don't get the badges. Right? So they're kind of invisible in vulnerable populations. That's just a wee example of some of the things. And that's kind of how we build around an issue. And the really neat thing for me is that, let's say, I'll pick you because you're close, let's say we chat about an issue over coffee and then we start going, we could do something here. Then you're going to need some people to actually do that. And one of the neatest things is them going and building the team. All right? And I'll show you, here's some of the team. All right, we've got, like I said, nearly 40 in the team, and these are off over different projects, and some of you are sitting here. But how it goes is we chatting to you and we say, oh, probably need like 5 people for that. So then I go to someone else here and say, hey, we're doing this thing over here, would you like to come and join us for it? Not meaning join the whole thing, but just join that project. And you go, maybe. I want to know a bit more than that. All right? And the way we actually engage is basically this. All right, we'd like you to come and join this project. We need your strengths. We need your IP. We need all your ideas, and you get all ours as well. We're not going to give you a contract because we don't work like that. It's going to be a high trust situation where you bring your strengths and you can see all our strengths. We're going to learn together around this. And from a business perspective, everything's transparent. All right, so you'll see exactly who gets paid what, and you'll actually help decide who gets paid what around this. Now, the interesting thing about that is I've been in the other situation, I've been invited into things with a weak contract and it's kind of hidden and you're kind of an employee, and I just say no to those things. All right, so there's kind of like a sense of equality in there, which is quite compelling for people. Okay, I wouldn't mind, give that a crack. The other thing we do is we do a date, not a marriage, right? As in, it sounds a bit crude, but we say, you know, we look like we might have the same values, but we'll never know until we try. So let's start. All right. And you kind of learn your way into it and you find that actually we are very aligned. All right. So this is cool. So we may not get married, but we'll have a whole lot more dates. All right. It's not like you're into the whole thing or not. All right. This is all the things we do now. I'm not going to explain the picture, but all those circles represent teams and cool projects. And here's how our culture rolls. And I think this is my last slide. This is some of the stuff that we've never really talked about because it's just sort of something we do. Have I got 1 minute here? Yeah. So we're very organic. We didn't really mean to grow. We don't aim to grow. Growth is not a goal for us, but we will respond to invitations and see if it feels like it aligns and resonates. We're very strength-based, so what we're doing is looking for other people who can bring diverse strengths that we don't have. It's about living values, so we don't really care what people say. It's what how they actually live. And it's really important to us that we gel together. It's really high trust relationships. Some people look at us and go, you don't seem to have any, like our lawyer gets a bit nervous, because we don't have contracts. But what we say is we're very clear up front how we work, and we expect that people will honour that, and they always have. And partly because they get to negotiate that with us, right? So that it's kind of their rules as well. We try to be culturally responsive. We connect with mana whenua, we connect with tangata whenua, and we connect with lots of other cultures, and we actively pursue a very diverse team. And not just cultural diversity, we've got age diversity and everything else diversity. Collective leadership, we've kind of learned not to have any individual leaders, so every project has at least 2 leaders. And there's a little bit of a sustainability thing there, all right, but it's also that we want to model what we talk about. So we don't want to say, hey, we're all about collective leadership and act like a hierarchical one. You have to practice what you preach, right? We're so lean, it's ridiculous. Like, we have no buildings, we have no assets, we have no paper, apart from this bit. We just use Google. We drive around. Today I've been in Kaipoi Library. I've been in a school. I've been in Joe's garage twice. And that's kind of how we work. And there's 30 of us doing that. And people look at me and go, you got no office? I'm like, no, we haven't even really got into hot desking. Your Zoom meetings, we definitely do that. Skype, and it doesn't really matter where you are, you just Zoom in. And I think it's amazing. And real-time peer learning is massive for us, you were talking about. I think that's the big draw card for me, all right, is to be able to be, like, I'd like to be competent, I like to learn, and I like to be maybe even quite edgy, all right? And the way we can do that is learn together, all right, because we just kind of can keep improving each other. And that's a really very motivating thing, all right, to know that we're doing probably the best we can because we're working together and teaching each other. And so we invest in time with that. We'd spend a lot of time eating and talking and discussing our practice together, all right? Feel a bit lucky. I think I'll stop there. Got a little ripple thing here, but Peter Kamek, who's the other director with me, he said, like, he's probably 10 years older than me, and he's kind of in that stage where he's not doing anything that he's not really aligned with, which is cool. And he said to me, all I want to be doing now is really important work with people I like and having fun. I'm like, okay, that's a good criteria. We'll stick with that. Thank you.